Hey MVPs, going to talk to you guys about the next fight on the main card. You see it here, Ariane Lipski versus Karine Silva. I'm going to take you guys back. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about the history of the UFC, but in the early 2000s, the best fighters in the UFC were Tito Ortiz and the Iceman Chuck Liddell. Those were the two best fighters in the UFC. And those were the guys that were champions and knocking people out. And then a guy named Rampage showed up, Rampage Jackson. And before that, it was Don Fry and Mark Coleman and Royce Gracie. I know the whole history, right? But there was this pocket where they would tell you the baddest man in the world, Tito Ortiz with the blonde hair. And this is before he started beating porn stars, right? Shout out to Jenna Jameson. What I want to tell you guys is those fighters in the UFC were so one-dimensional. And it was the premise of the UFC. It was this black belt versus this black belt. It was practitioners versus practitioners. And the whole thing, when it first started, it was a kickboxer versus a shoot boxer and a sambo wrestler versus jiu-jitsu, taekwondo versus judo. And it was all about this challenge fighting. And this all started with the Gracies. The Gracies used to go around and challenge people to show you that jiu-jitsu was the best martial art. And they would challenge anybody. And there's this whole history of Helio Gracie way back in the day. And I believe that's Royce Gracie's either uncle or grandfather. Well, Helio Gracie was a small guy, and he challenged every black belt in the world in any dojo anywhere. And they would do these fights where they would challenge them. And I remember he did a fight where he challenged the judo champ from Japan, undefeated judo champ who weighed 190 pounds versus Helio Gracie who weighed 130. And they fought for an hour. And it was whoever was going to quit first. And it was a judo champ versus this. And they're fighting in their gis and they're fighting on a mat. And that was the origin of the UFC. That was the beginning of it all. The beginning of martial arts and challenging one another. Now, I used to teach a block on this when I taught. I used to teach martial arts, hand-to-hand combat, and fighting. I used to teach in a fight house. I used to do this. When I teach you guys the history of martial arts, this is before, this is after certain Japanese guys like Kimura, when they migrated over to Brazil and taught Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It was actually from Japan. And this all originated from getting rid of the swords, the samurai swords. If you didn't know, any martial art ending in su, jiu-jitsu, any martial art ending in su meant it was practical. It could be applicable, and it was real, and it was beneficial to fighting. Any martial art ending in do, taekwondo, judo, all that, was actually just meant to improve your discipline and your character and all this other crap. But it was really all because they had outlawed the two samurai swords. You couldn't walk around in public with two swords crossed around your back, the mark of a samurai. So enough of that. The point I'm trying to make is as we evolve with martial arts and we start applying it to fighting, we got to this pinnacle of the UFC where we started mixing all the martial arts, and you had Tito Ortiz at the pinnacle of fighting. Today, Tito Ortiz cannot fight. Tito Ortiz is not any good, and he never was good. He was a one-dimensional fighter who had some understanding of grappling, some understanding of wrestling, and was kind of tough, could punch a little bit, and it was a limited thing. And over the years, we've gotten rid of the single practitioners. If you can only box, kickbox, strike, you will not be a world champion, theoretically. And if you can only grapple, jiu-jitsu, you will not be a world champion, theoretically, because there are a whole new breed of fighter. Right now, the big wave is the Russian wrestler, the body grappler, the relentless wrestling. And I apologize, I have gardeners out front cutting the grass, and they're going to be in the background here. But the point I'm trying to make is the UFC evolves. And the men actually evolved before the women, meaning the men got better in a hurry. It went from just these guys who could do one skill set to true MMA or mixed martial arts. Now we have guys who can do the throws of judo, the takedowns of wrestling, the submissions of jiu-jitsu, the knees and elbows of Muay Thai, the boxing of boxing, and the kicking of kickboxing, right? So you can do everything now. These guys train in every aspect and every facet of fighting. And I bring that all up because When the women started fighting in the UFC, it wasn't until like 2012, 2013, 2014, and then we get Ronda Rousey in 2015, 2016, and you get a girl who was a judo champion, a judo Olympian, and she shows up to the MMA world and goes, oh, you guys are doing this? Well, let me show you how my judo works. I know an arm bar and I can do judo. And that was fine, and that was winning everything. But just like the men with those single practitioners, over time, you found a new breed of fighter. And here comes the kickboxers. And here comes the very muscular, manly world beaters. Shout out to Amanda Nunes and Cyborg and all these people, right? Women just started showing up with muscles and out-muscling you. It was no longer okay to just be one practitioner and say you're good. You had to work at everything. So the women started evolving over the last 10 years, and now we have more complete women fighters. Stronger women fighters. The women fighters of the old days, they aren't any good. Just like the men, they faded away because they weren't good enough. It just evolves. I bring all that up to talk about this fight. Ariane Lipski, to me, is that older breed of fighter. She's 30. They're both 30. But when women started fighting, there were still elite athletes in other sports. It's why we have a terrible soccer team in America. It's because our soccer players are playing other sports. They would be amazing soccer players if they didn't play football, basketball, and baseball their entire lives. If they only played youth soccer and came up in a soccer channel and in a soccer training regiment, only soccer, we would have the best soccer players in the world. But that's not how it works. We have American football. It's more lucrative. Theoretically. I know soccer pays a lot more. The point I'm trying to make is, once the women realized, oh man, the UFC is where the money's at, now you have judo champions coming. Now you have every athlete coming. You have women quitting gymnastics and cheerleading and other sports, and I'm not a boxer anymore. I need to get to the UFC and go make money. So now there's a new breed of UFC fighter, and it's not these dainty girls. Nope. It's broad shoulders and ripped. And I'm ready to rip your head off. And that's exactly what's happening here. You have a Brazilian fighter in Ariane Lipski, skinny, beautiful, looks the part, gets her nails done, whatever. And then you have a meat eater, a carnivore in Silva. Karine Silva's a carnivore, a beast. And I mean that in the most positive way. And we're moving towards women MMA fighters being carnivores. So the old guard slipping out, and this new breed of fighters showing up. Ariane Lipski started fighting back in 2013, been fighting for a while, used to be on a long win streak, then ran into Joanne Wood, who's kind of a scrapper, right? Molly McCann, and you see some of these other fights that she's lost. She is on a 3-fight win streak. She did beat JJ Aldrich, just looks like a house mom who works out. Gato's nice. Hey, some of these women are beautiful. Some of these women are great. But something to be said about a fighter. You know, it was Nate Diaz who said rich people shouldn't fight because they have nothing to fight for. Like, it doesn't matter if they win or lose. They still have money. They're still okay. They're not fighting for their meal. They're not fighting out of necessity. They're fighting because it's something they want to do. Rich people shouldn't fight. Well, pretty girls shouldn't fight. They ain't got a reason to, bruh. Pretty girls shouldn't fight. And Ariane Lipski comes across as a pretty girl who shouldn't be fighting. She's beautiful. She's been getting better at fighting. She's been fighting for a long time. She's been improving. Karine Silva is not going to win any beauty contest. But she's an absolute... Her nickname is Killer. She is the epitome of evolution in the MMA world. She submits everyone any way she wants. She submits all day. And I know Lipski's never been submitted. Ariane Lipski's never been submitted. Okay? But when you see This woman, get in the octagon. You guys are going to see when you see her. She's dangerous. 17 wins, 4 losses. She is dangerous. She just looks like a problem. She looks like a problem, and she just got to the UFC. We just discovered her. Every person she's fought, you're getting submitted. And what's crazy about her submissions is she has 2 in the last 3 fights. 2 of her submissions were in the last 10 seconds of the round. 1 second left, and they're saying, get me the hell out of here. 1 second left. That means you're fighting somebody with no heart. You're fighting somebody who's too pretty to be in there. You're fighting somebody who's not built for this. If you're tapping with 1 second left, you're not a fighter. And the person tapping you out is. And she's done this multiple times. You see that first round right there? 4:59. That means 1 second left. 5 seconds left. She's a monster. This is the lock on the card. Lock of all locks. I'm with it, man. Problem. You go check the sports book. They got it locked. You can't bet the money line. You can't even bet on this fight. I don't know why. I don't know if there's a weight issue, if there's a dispute about something, but all day long I keep checking this and it's not letting me bet on it. The odds aren't that huge. I'm just telling you my assessment is you should be betting on it. You can't, though. It's not letting me. Check a different sports book. Do what you do. But if you want to just take it straight up, that's on you. But I like Silva to win this fight. Don't know if she's going to get the submission just because Lipski is a good fighter. But Silva's going to look good to the judges. She's going to look noticeably stronger. Every jab's going to move her. When you see somebody land a combo and it just kind of bounces and glances off their shoulders, and then the other person throws a combo and it looks like damage occurred and people move and you're throwing with bad intentions, that optic, the judges have no choice but to acknowledge it. She's going to win rounds. She's going to win the fight. I'm with Karine Silva. I know it's a step up in competition. I think she's a new breed of fighter. My name is Rico Knows. I hope I helped you. Peace.